Okay? All right. Today's topic is about Jacob. Jacob. Limping into transformation. Why is he limping? He was in a fight. And his thigh muscle got shredded. Right? So he has a problem from his past. He has sort of a handicap there. What about Paul? We listened to him talk about it in Colossians. And just think in general about Paul. What kind of a handicap did Paul have in serving Christ?
Did he stutter?
Well, he was blinded.
He was blinded.
Had a thorn in his side.
He had a thorn in his side. He was one of the maniacal persecutors of the early Christians. He was absolutely obsessed with putting them out of business. Right? He had a big hang-up. These people should not be doing this. They are breaking the law. He was sort of an enforcer type. He had a past, right? He had a past as a persecutor of the church. He had sort of a personality disorder when it came to being a functioning new Christian. I can't do that. I can't focus like that. Well, I can't be welcoming to this kind of person. Or, oh, I can't deal with that. They're eating the wrong kind of food. Or they're not dressing right. All sorts of things he had in his head that was stopping him from really serving God in the way God wanted him to serve. So, rather dramatically, God said, "Bam! You're blind." Right? Kind of woke him up. Yeah? Eventually, Paul became one of the most fantastic servants of the new church and of Christ that ever was. I will grant you that because of the society that Paul lived in and the traditions of the time, there are some things that he said, like, okay, if you want to go to church and behave, this is what you have to do. Some things that at that time made perfect sense. And as time evolved and societies changed and people changed and even ended up, with all sorts of different kinds of people, some of those things might not make a lot of sense right now, every day, right? Just like if we go to Leviticus, we could probably stone everybody in this room with those laws, and that, again, was because of the time. Things about food practices. There wasn't a lot of option things available. There weren't a lot of options for keeping your food healthy and safe to eat. So there were very definite restrictions about what to eat. And many of that came out of, you shouldn't eat that or you will die. And you could die if you get trichinosis from pork. Yes? Right? And shellfish could have botulism and all sorts of crazy things. So some of those things were societal, and some weren't. And in many ways, the obedience is a good lesson, no matter what. And many of those practices of eating kosher are very good practices health-wise. Still today, we look back. But all I'm saying is, Paul had all of these rules ingrained in him. Now, let's think a little bit about transformation. Paul had to transform. Jacob transformed. And we're going to talk more about Jacob's story in a minute. But both of them had something in common. They had old identities. They were understood to be certain people. Paul, the persecutor of the early Christians, and Jacob killed his brother. Well, not killed his brother. He took his inheritance. He took his blessing. He took Esau's blessing. He was a thief. Right? He was an imitator. He pretended to be his brother and took his inheritance away and then ran off and got rich. This is the man we call Israel. Later. So they both have these old identities, and yet they are going to be leaders for God. So the actual transformation that is experienced by them and will be experienced by us and is being experienced by us is an act of God's grace. Last week we talked about we have to form a partnership with God, right? We have to form a partnership. God can't give us God's grace if we won't take it. If we won't hook up, we won't get it. Right? So together we work with God to move towards that act of transformation. We are actually, each and every one of us, blessed. And we are blessed as a congregation because of our struggles. And I have to tell you, we have had struggles. The people that started Bethel had struggles. Getting the land, building the building, starting in one place. Where did we figure out that was, Donna? Down?
Originally they started in an upstairs room, and then they moved to between Palm and Laurel South on 8th Street.
So down south of Holt.
1889.
Yeah. And ended up here, 1912, building this wonderful facility. So struggles make us stronger and give us gifts and make it possible for our congregation, for our people, and for God's people to bring those gifts to the community, to the world. The story in Genesis 32, we're picking this up where Jacob is literally fearing for his life. Now, we could have read the whole long story from, I think it's chapter 27, where Jacob tricks his brother Esau out of his birthright and then lies to his father, steals Esau's blessing from Isaac. Jacob had to flee to the relatives of his mother, and he was way off in some foreign country doing this to escape from retaliation from Esau. So he was like, oh, I really did wrong, I'm going to get out of here so they don't punish me. He had a really good life there. He got a nice family, big tribe, real comfortable, very successful. If it were a Disney movie, then he would live happily ever after in the land of his mother. But God had some other plans for Jacob. God called him from this place he had that was very secure and comfortable and told him, take your family, take your possessions, and go back to your homeland. Now remember, as far as Jacob knew, Esau was still out for blood. Esau's like, that guy, he took my home. And Jacob had made a really good life for himself, so why should he leave and probably go get killed? What is the purpose for that? Not to mention all the logistics of moving. All right, now it's not like, as any of us look forward to moving, I mean, I know that Santiago and Candace moved, what, a year ago? And we moved 2 years ago, and boy, what a pain. What a pain. This guy had all kinds of people, not just him and he had tribes of people and livestock and all sorts of stuff. And as we move a small village, across.
No such thing as moving vans.
Yeah, no moving vans, maybe camels. So here, now we're at 32, he's kind of camping out, he's getting close to home. He decides he's going to separate his group into two groups because he's afraid of being attacked by his brother. So he separates them into two so that if the brother does attack, part of them will survive. So he's thinking about things. He's trying to make logical plans. He's made a lot of peace offerings, sort of bribes, right, ahead to try to buy Esau's favor. But now he has not only separated the two groups, he has taken himself out of the groups so that in case Esau is still coming to kill him, he's away from his family and his loved ones. So, he's probably camping out that night thinking, all right, I'm done for. I'm dead. And so this time in his life probably seemed like the absolute worst, horrible pit of his life. His life was the pits, literally. He was hiding. But what it really was was perfect, fertile ground for Jacob's transformation. Pain and comfort can be excellent motivators for change. We rarely seek out change when we feel comfortable, right? If we're all satisfied, why should we change? Creation was brought out of chaos. Chaos is usually not very comfortable. Often our whole world has to be turned upside down before we are willing to go on a journey of change and transformation. Jacob was there. He was in chaos and confusion. He didn't know what to do if Esau came after him. He probably partly felt like he deserved whatever Esau was going to dish out, having stolen his inheritance. So should he surrender and die? But God told him to go here, so God must have a plan. So it must be his responsibility to protect his family, protect his village, to stay alive and do whatever it is God has in mind. Jacob was wrestling with himself and wrestling with God and wrestling with this angel. It is our nature to want control. Right? This morning was a ridiculous mess. I woke up to a message that someone I expected to come and play wasn't coming after all, with a back sprain or something. And I wrote back and I said, boy, I wish I had known that, last night when I was printing bulletins and telling Sandy, no, we just need the guitar. And 2 days ago when I told Clara, well, Britt said he's coming. So, but instead at, 6 a.m. I'm thinking, no, it's too early to call Clara on the phone. And I'll just talk to So it wouldn't be too early? Okay, this is good to know. So next time anything like that happens, I'm calling it. So it was a mess. It was chaotic. And so I opened up Sandy's computer, because Sandy is the bulletin wizard with these lately bulletins, and I opened it up and found the file and went, okay, and I took out Britt's name and put Sandy's name in and things like that, and all of that before I got here. Then I forgot the camera, all kinds of stuff. Just chaotic. I would love to have control, but in spite of that, we're here. We're worshiping and we're learning, and we found creative ways to handle this, and we're having a lovely time. We can be very creative, every single one of us, in finding ways to fight against change and establish our sense of control and security. Okay, I'm going to do this way. I've got this all set. I'm all ready. Jacob wrestled all night because no matter which way he went, he didn't find clear answers. He didn't run back to where he came from. He didn't give up to being powerless. He just stuck to it. He stayed to the process. He wrestled and fought and tried to figure it out and tried to win the battle. Even after being wounded, his thigh muscle, remember? Even after being wounded, he kept in the battle, insisting that he was going to get a blessing. God told him he was going to get a blessing. I'm sticking with this battle. Here's some of the transformation aspects. First, he's in an unfamiliar place. Major life transition, no guarantee of a happy future, or even living long enough to have a future. We're in a major transition here. And we are confident that we have a future. Every week I see a few different faces coming and joining us. It gives me great joy and confidence that come the real year, when we start up in September, a lot of these faces are going to be here almost every week, every time, bringing their gifts. But it's scary. It's unfamiliar. It's dark. It's nighttime. And he has isolated himself from others' need or influence. He stays in the process, even though he doesn't seem to know with whom he's wrestling or why. He just knows he has to grapple. His resistance to change results in that wounding, which humbles him. So he can now be open to receiving this blessing. The actual moment in the story, the actual catalyst for transformation, is somewhat of a mystery. Maybe it's when the angel says, "What is your name?" You know, maybe it's when Jacob has to own up to, "This is who I am." But it is sort of a mystery. There's not a thing in the verse that says, "This is the moment." Right? A lot of times we ourselves are wounded. And we don't very easily move past being victimized. We try. We kind of move on, but we fall back into it. Remember last week's story of the ex-leper from the life of Brian. If you weren't here, you missed my tremendous reading of the life of Brian with a really bad English accent. But the ex-leper who said, "He just came along and healed me, and now I don't have a career. I can't go begging from being a leper." You know, the ex-leper was upset because he had this history in his life of begging because he was disabled. He was a leper. He didn't know how to go do anything else to get a job, to pull himself up. And so now he wanted, in the silly movie, The Life of Brian, he tells Brian that he wants Jesus to come back and maybe, don't make him a leper again, but, you know, make him like lame in one leg, but just 5 days a week so he can enjoy the weekends and beg on the weekdays. You know, I'm afraid some of us do this same thing. You know, we get stuck in a hole of where we are, and we stay a victim because that's easier. Part of Jacob's struggle was moving past this wounding, yes, somewhat symbolic, but moving past that injury and that wound. The struggle and the wound were part of this fertile soil from where the transformation could happen. Jacob's actual transformation was what in the story? What was his transformation? What changed? His name. Yes, Jeffrey. His name was changed from Jacob to Israel. Mm-hmm. Israel was God's people. Yes. At that time, that is God's people. Right? His transformation was the renaming. We don't know why he deserved that. Perhaps because he persevered and struggled and fought for it. But it was God's grace. Don't we think that if God wanted the angel to win, God could have said, "Okay, Jacob, you lose." God wanted Jacob to grow and to transform. He wanted him to go get something out of that struggle, to learn something, that being transformed is worth the struggle. It moved him past thinking of himself as he always had done, and into seeing himself in a new way in God's eyes. Jacob's story is sometimes thought of as paralleling the story of the cross. Jesus' story of struggle, painful loss, death, resulting in new life, new identity, new transformation through the resurrection. When I was a teenager, how many years ago, there was a very important movement going on, and I can't even remember, Wayne might remember, Sandy might remember, who was heading it up, but it had to do, there was an evangelist, might have been Hal Lindsey, maybe, working with teenagers who were in gangs or in prison and helping them transform into servants of God. And it reminded me of Jacob all the time. Kind of an outlaw, right? Outlaws who then
that was Sandhya R.Jha from
I think that's another one. This was even longer ago than that. I'm older than I look. Yes!
Oh, yeah.
Say that again? David Wilkerson. Yeah, The Cross and the Switchblade. That was the name of the book. It was a very, very popular book and incredible stories in that. Something you might go look up for an old book to read. Now, I want to take just a few minutes and think about a few things. First of all, for yourself, think about a time when you have felt wounded in the middle of a struggle or a life transition. And in what ways have you changed as a result of that? And in what ways do you still carry that mark? So think about that again, and you can think about this during the week. I'm not going to ask for a 2-hour-long group discussion here. Think of a time when you have felt wounded in the midst of some kind of struggle or life transition. As a result of that, how did you change? How were you transformed? And how do you still carry that wound? Got it? Okay. The wound might be as simple as, I lost someone that I loved. You know, and as a result, I reach out more to people and try to let them know how I feel. And I still feel sorrow about the person that I lost. But there may be much more to that. Right? Some people have endured abuse as children and have come through it, but still have an incredible sensitivity, or perhaps a bit of having trouble being close to other people because of it. Some people have a lot of fear. Maybe they were picked on. Anybody have a nickname that they hated? Okay, you can remember that, right? You don't have to tell me. Right? But have nicknames, and you hope that maybe nobody even finds it out, you know, and calls you that again. Or maybe you've just been called names in school. Junior high can be cruel. I was called an odd duck by somebody once. And now I don't mind at all. I am kind of an odd duck. But at the time, I was 13. So that really bothered me. What I got out of it was I decided that I didn't care, because if they thought I was odd, that was their problem. The reason they thought I was an odd duck was because I was at one of those summer music camp things and I was always practicing. They were going swimming, playing volleyball. You know, they thought I was kind of weird. I was staying in my room studying or practicing. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to get the job. You know? And they're not. But as a result, I've come through that saying, you know, I don't mind. I can go somewhere, someplace playing, and I can be backstage warming up and not feeling self-conscious about it. Some people, they'll just leave their instrument in their case and barely get it out in time to go on stage because they don't want everybody else to hear them play because they're embarrassed. Now, of course, that comes from my life experience, right? You may have different stories, but think about that. Now, thinking about whatever it was you thought of, whether it be your nickname or the time when you had a wound or a struggle that transformed you and you still carry some of that, think about it, and we're going to try to refer to it in our minds when we think about our congregation as a whole. I'm just going to give you some questions, and these again are food for thought. If you really want to jump in and say something, you can. It's perfectly fine. What identity or purpose is Bethel wrestling with while trying to discern God's plan? What gift or blessing do we have as a result of our struggle? How can we bring that gift or blessing to serve as we discern the ministry of our congregation in our community? Right? I'm going to ask those again. What identity or purpose does Bethel have? Are we wrestling with while we're trying to discern God's plan? What blessing do we have as a result of our personal struggle, our congregational struggle? And how can we bring that gift or blessing to our community? Those are things for us to think about, right, and to work towards. There aren't instant answers. Some of the blessings I see are that People are ministering to each other. That is one of the biggest blessings I see every single time I come over here. People are caring for each other. They are stepping out and picking up the ball. And every time I've been here in the last couple of weeks, we've had someone from the community visiting us and being a part of things. Jeffrey's visiting today, and he even gave a shot at singing with us. You know, the other night we had a gentleman named Philip who came to Bible study and was a wonderful contributor. So people are exploring. Our job is what? Reach out, welcome them. Allow everyone who comes to share their own personal ministry and their own personal gifts in whatever way works for them so that we can receive the blessings from them as well. We have made a journey over the last 4 weeks from leaving Egypt and crossing the desert. Right? We haven't spent 40 years. We spent four weeks, and we're not done yet. It may take 40 years. And then today, we're working on identifying what's hurting, how can we use that, and transform it into blessings and gifts that we share with our community and build our community here. We've been with Jacob in the wilderness this morning, learning about wrestling with God and with the angel, opening the gift that comes from pain and wrestling. That saying, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, comes to mind, right? We're thinking about this week how we can use those gifts in service to our congregation's ministry. And we give thanks to the gifts that God gives us and to the way that God calls us into new relationship. The ministry of all of us is part of our transformation. You have in your bulletins today a little prayer practice. And it's a fairly simple one. And it's something at the end of each day to do. Reflect on some kind of struggle you've had that very day. Not just a lifetime of struggles, that's depressing. Something that day. Pray for openness to receive the blessing that may have been offered to you through it. Reflect on the struggles here at Bethel, in our congregation, and how you, each one of you personally, can bring your gifts to those struggles, and how God can bless the congregation as it grows through those struggles. And I have a little thing there that says, consider adding these thoughts to your gratitude journal. That, of course, assumes you have one. If you don't have a gratitude journal or some kind of journal or something, they're really useful. It's great if you can write every day, but if you can't, just write something down whenever you can. It's really awesome to go back and look through and say, oh, look what I learned that day. I'm so glad. Because I forget, to go back and look through and see. And it can be very helpful to do that. Just as I've had you writing down little things, little blessings that you want to make, little spiritual hungers that we had. We had a week of writing down what is our personal spiritual hunger today, what is our congregational spiritual hunger going on. All of these things are things that serve to help us learn and transform. Not a single one of these last 4 weeks has been a day that, okay, we're done, we know all our answers, we're good to go. Every single week has had a little bit of a challenge for us, yes, a task. And there's more to come. Before we sing our hymn, I want to tell you about what's coming up. Okay, next week there will be a guest speaker. His name is Bill Kunitz. He is the president and CEO of Pilgrim Place. He's an ordained UCC minister, and he also is the past moderator of Claremont UCC. He sings in their choir. Very, very caring and astute gentleman. He visited us last week, if some of you didn't know who that was over there. He visited us last week. He really enjoyed the service and understands the work that we're doing right now and is behind us absolutely 100%. And he is coming to support that. The reason that's happening is that I have a booking from about a year ago to go to presentation at Cal State Long Beach next Sunday, and it requires that I leave at about 9:30. So I have to be there at 11. So I've asked Bill, and we talked with Donna about that, Donna Suggs, and we're delighted that he's going to come. And their choir is not going to sing next Sunday, but we'll have hymns and other music for the service. So just so you know, and feel free to invite someone to hear Bill. He's a lovely guy, and I think we'll get something good out of it. And I'll try to have a camera ready for Sandy to set up so that we can preserve that, and I can get to see what he did. Okay? Okay.
Resume your series.
Yes, thank you. Then after that, there are two more in this series, and the next two are more about congregational action. You've probably seen the write-up in your bulletins that talk about 5 and 6, new life amidst the dry bones and the wind power of transformation. So talking about revitalizing our community and about Pentecost and the Spirit in Acts that came and inhabited all of the disciples, and how we can go there too. So that's coming up next. They're sort of now we've done each sort of individual thing, and now we're going for the group process in numbers 5 and 6. So that'll happen in 2 and 3 weeks from now. So now we will sing together number 500. We are climbing Jacob's ladder.